Welcome to this webinar today on the in-depth report that we did as part of our micro-CHP service on the price elasticity. Today by two of my colleagues, Stephen Ashurst and Kate Lyon, who will be doing the presentation. Agenda this afternoon. I'll do a short introduction for those of you that may not be familiar with Delta and our micro-CHP research service. Then I'll hand over to Kate to talk about, then we'll talk through some of the key findings and take a closer look at the pricing and uptake curves. We're happy to take your questions during the webinar. On the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a dialog box, and you can submit questions by typing them into the question box towards the bottom of that dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. So we're happy to take your questions, and we'll try and answer those either today, or if we can't get to them all today, we'll certainly come back to you individually with some responses. Before we begin, though, it's worth saying that I know there are a few subscribers to our micro-CHP service on the call. We're very happy to have you today on this webinar, but it's worth pointing out that if you want more detail, there is a full copy of the detailed presentation and report that we have available on the website, on the members section of the website. So while today we'll be presenting some findings and highlights from the report, all of the detail and the data is available to our subscribers already by logging on to the member section of the website. So just a very brief introduction for those that may not be familiar with Delta. We're an energy research company based in Edinburgh. We focus on helping clients succeed in low carbon heat and distributed energy. So the technologies that you can see highlighted in the orange bubble here are really the technologies and markets that we focus on as an energy consultant. We're very much a commercial consultant, so we advise clients in terms of market forecasts, analysis, competitor analysis, strategy and tactics. And our primary client groups are the energy companies, the big European and Asian utility companies, and the manufacturers of many of the technologies that you see on this chart. We have a number of research services shown on the slide. These cover topics such as the connected home, heat pumps, CHP, distributed power, and we also have pathways and roadmap services which look at the future of the home energy market across different European countries. But today, from our micro-CHP research service, which you can see described at the bottom of this slide, this research service has been running for almost 10 years now and is, we think, the leading resource of analysis and insight into the micro-CHP industry and markets. Subscribers have access to almost a decade's worth of analysis and in-depth reports in this area, and we have regular dialogue and discussion with our subscribers. We'd be delighted to welcome any of those participants on the call today to become subscribers to this service. So in terms of the in-depth report we're presenting today, these were some of the questions that we focused on when developing this study. How much are people really willing to pay for micro-CHP? From a manufacturer perspective, the question might be, well, if we lowered the price by 2,000 euros, would we still sell the same number of units, or would the number of units go up? From a utility perspective, it might be more about understanding where the key markets are.
My name is Kate Lyon, and I'm working on the micro-CHP research service here at Delta. So yes, this piece of research was really looking at how much people are willing to pay in 3 countries. We looked at Germany, the Netherlands and the UK, and what we were interested in finding out was how much people are happy to pay and is the price that they're willing to pay. So just a quick introduction on price elasticity. Price elasticity refers to on sales is from changing the price of something. So if you are aiming to sell a micro-CHP unit at 18,000 euros and you lower the price by, say, 2,000 euros, if no impact on your sales, then you say the price is inelastic. So lowering the price doesn't lead to any change in how willing people are to buy it. So in this case, it wouldn't really make sense to try and cut the price because you wouldn't see a corresponding increase in the number of units you sold. The alternative to that is that you do see a price elastic response, which is that if you change the price, then if you decrease. So if this is the case, when you look at the price and the customer response to it, it probably would make sense for you to try and cut the price as much as possible in order to increase your sales. And here's just a graph demonstrating the same thing. The blue line at the bottom shows a relatively inelastic response, so dropping the price doesn't lead to a very big increase in the number of customers. But the yellow line shows a product which has a very elastic response. So if you manage to lower the price, you see a big increase. So as I said, we were interested in looking at, we were told markets they're most interested in Europe. So we looked at the Netherlands. We got survey responses from over to these. The people we surveyed were in the high income bracket, so A, B, C1 equivalent, for those of you familiar with that socioeconomic grouping. The people were homeowners and they were responsible, at least fully or partly, for the heating and paying the energy bills. And we had people who lived in houses, detached, semi-detached or terraced. We excluded flats. So we started the email by giving people a brief description of each technology. We tried to keep it fairly light and fairly plain and fairly matter of fact. We described a Stirling engine product and a fuel cell product, and we also presented people with key information, so how much they might expect to save on their energy bills each year, how much incentives, and how much of the home's heating and electricity needs each of these. So in order to figure out how much people would be willing to pay for the method called the transfer pricing method. So you start out by asking somebody if they'd be willing to pay a certain price, say £5,000 in the UK, and would they be willing to pay this? If they say yes, then you increase the price by a certain increment, so say up to £6,000, and ask them again, would they be willing to pay? But if at the start they said no, we wouldn't pay £5,000, that's too much, then you lower the price to pay that. At the end, you ask people to state what the maximum price is that they'd be willing to pay for the technology. And now I'm going to hand back to what we found.
Thanks, Kate. Good afternoon. To reiterate that we introduced at the beginning of the presentation, these are the major questions that our subscribers are really tackling with at the moment and have been for some time in the micro-CHP markets. Primarily, how do you get to volumes with prices being as they are today, which is what the manufacturer on the left-hand side there is saying. And of course, price doesn't just influence the manufacturer, it has a knock-on impact throughout the entire value chain as well. So let's go on, and I'm now going to take you through just some of the most interesting high-level conclusions we found from our research. And for micro-CHP is generally inelastic at higher prices, but becomes increasingly elastic below these price ranges. So we have a few charts that we'll introduce in a moment, which give you a mentioned in an inelastic price region, say a higher cost price region, more typical of what we find just now. It doesn't make sense to try to reduce the selling cost of the product because larger volumes will not follow, but of course profits will fall. Conversely, as we drop down the price curve, customers become increasingly more elastic to small changes in what the product costs. Moving on, we surveyed 3 countries, Germany, the UK and the Netherlands, and it was very clear that customer willingness to pay does vary quite considerably by which country you look at, which country you're selling in, and of course by technology as well. So the two technologies, the two pitches, if you will, that we put to respondents in our survey were for a fuel cell micro-CHP product and a Stirling engine micro-CHP product, so covering both the lower electrical efficiency and higher efficiency range of the product spectrum. And we found the response by customer and by technology was quite different in each country. The ideal price, many attendees today were probably hoping for us to spill the beans on what an ideal price is to sell micro-CHP. Well, of course, simple. The ideal price does depend on the country, and we'll see that in a moment, the technology you are selling, and the outcome of this research was really to help our subscribers visualize our realistic market to realistically achievable prices at which they could offer their products into the market at. So this graph explains and shows the outcome of our research. So the data here represents 215 higher income homeowners in Germany, so the lucrative markets in Europe for micro-CHP to date. And just to explain fully, the horizontal shows the default cost to the end user, and you can see on the hand side that's where the price is lowest, and on moving over to the left hand side that's where it's high. On the vertical axis on the right hand side you can see how installed cost relates to the likely market. Talk to us. We had customers really think about we put, along with a description of the product, we likely achieve in their home and the likely annual benefit they receive from the government incentives to make quite an informed decision. And this shows the response. Kate, you just wanted to do a few key points in this.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So yeah, as Stephen was saying, this is the graph of the results that we saw from Germany, how uptake responds to price. So we were talking earlier about when price is elastic and when it's inelastic. And if you look over on the left-hand side of the graph, above where it says high, you can see that at these prices, the response is inelastic. So there's no change in the percentage of customers who are happy to install this as you vary the price. So if the cheapest you can manage to make your product and bring your product to market is somewhere in this band, it almost doesn't really matter where within this band that you sell it. If you raise the price, you're probably not going to lose any customers. If you lower the price, you're not going to see any big increases. And then as we move towards the right-hand side of the graph, you can see that as we lower the price, the amount of uptake starts to increase. The two different colours on the graph here represent the two different categories of technology that we were showing people. So the blue is the fuel cell and the purple is the Stirling engine product. You'll be able to see from this graph that people generally higher price for a fuel cell technology than they were from engine technology, and that was fairly consistent throughout the sample. The other thing to bear in mind is that I suppose demand for fuel cells starts to pick up much more quickly than for Stirling engine. So as we move from a high price on the left to a lower price on the right, we get to see sooner for the fuel cell than for the engine.
Thanks, Kate. Spot on, and we appreciate that it's the axis, the costs aren't given on the axis here to give attendees today an idea we're talking about. If you know the German market, current fully installed costs on the horizontal axis, if you look just above the word fully, that's where we're about at today. So that's just to help you picture where the German customers stated that they would uptake. So that's about 5 or 10% customers in Germany in our sample stated that they would be very likely to install a Stirling engine product at existing costs.
One last thing that's worth thinking about, look right over on the right-hand side on the vertical axis. You can see the graph here runs from 0 uptake to 100% uptake. Right at the top, we found there were just a certain percentage of our sample who feel a micro-CHP product at any of the prices that we showed them, which was a little bit disappointing. We're hoping with a low enough price nearly everyone would want one, but it's just interesting to see.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to results of the UK now. We have got some questions coming in. We will present the key findings of the sample, and then we'll pause to take some from the audience before we move on for the remainder of the presentation.
And for those that have joined the webinar in the last 10 minutes or so, all of the detail and report is available already on our subscriber website. I see we have a few subscribers to our micro-CHP service on the line, so if you are a subscriber, please log in, be able to download these charts with all of the data and the numbers on the axes. So if you're on the line as a subscriber, please log on to the subscriber website to get access to the detail.
Thanks, Andy. So that's Germany, as you know, the most successful market for micro-CHP outside of Japan. This is the response that we received from our 212 respondents in the UK. Again, this is the target market for micro-CHP, higher earners, people who own their own home, not a flat, so they're not impacted by a lack of physical space to install a micro-CHP unit. And immediately the striking thing you see is that in comparison to the Germany graph, both the bar for fuel cell and engine do not extend as far along to the left as it did in Germany. So what that shows, of course, is that customers in the UK were less willing to pay a higher price for a micro-CHP or micro-CHP system. Again, on the vertical axis, you can see the highest market uptake we get at even at a lower price, or at the lowest price for micro is up only at about 60 to 65%. And one is the slimmer appearance of the blue area. Whilst in the UK we also observed that homeowners are willing to pay a premium over the engine, primarily based, of course, on revenue to be gained from the PIF, as well as the overall annual running cost savings based on the higher electrical output. It was a far slimmer margin than we observed in Germany. So I think that's a good point to stop and take some questions. One last thing, as a matter of fact, good point, Kate. To give attendees an idea of how this relates to the current market in the UK as well. Current fully installed costs for the Stirling engine products that are available here are just to the left of the word fully at the bottom of the horizontal axis. So in comparison to Germany and the UK, a much lower cost market, but again, 1 or 2% or 5% uptake is still quite a significant chunk out of the 1.7 million annual market for condensing gas boilers. So now we're just going to load your questions. Bear with us 2 seconds while we do that, and we'll look to address those questions that have came into us already.
So I think we've got a question there about leasing versus upfront cost. So
yeah, someone's asking what would the position of a particular manufacturer's product be compared to the technologies shown here. Well, of course, it's not directly comparable. We did test a fully installed cost price, so this was not an innovative finance deal where the customer would either receive a product for free or would pay that product off through instalments over a certain duration of contract, maybe 5 years, 10 years. This was an upfront cash purchase, as is more typical.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. The question relates to essentially offering a product for free to a customer so they have no upfront cost for installation. I mean, we see those business models starting to emerge. We see some innovators starting to offer those types of propositions to customers for different types of product, actually, not just micro-CHP. They're certainly very interesting propositions because in a market such as the UK, the upfront cost is certainly one of the critical barriers for customers, probably less so in some other markets like Germany, but certainly in the UK, the upfront cost is certainly one of the big barriers for customers. So that is a very interesting model. In some other research that we did recently for our Microgen Insight service, we ran some other market research through our subcontractor Accent, who conducts the online survey and focus group work for us. And they specifically looked at the interest from customers into financial propositions, including specifically the product for free offer that the questioner was asking about. And certainly that research, which again is available to the subscribers of our Microgen Insight research service, shows that the product for free model is a very interesting one for many customers and actually could have a significant impact upon uptake in the market. So we do expect those offers to have an impact on the market and act as a trigger for more customers to buy the product.
Great, thanks, Andy. Yes, and we've had a question from America. Good morning, America. Did you consider internal combustion engines at larger scale in this research? Well, no, not in this particular phase of research. So I'll move back to the German slide just because there's a little bit more to look at. So this was just looking at the residential market, which has been the key focus of micro-CHP players up to this point. In terms of where an internal combustion engine system would lie on this chart, well, of course it has a higher electrical output than Stirling engine systems and a considerably lower margin than a fuel cell micro-CHP product. So we believe that if we asked customers about their likely uptake of an internal combustion engine based micro-CHP product, you would see the line would split the gap between the blue and the purple sections on our chart. So we believe it would be somewhere in the middle of the range of uptake from of Stirling and fuel cell. An interesting question to address in future, though, if that's something that is needed by the industry. And of course, speaking specifically about commercial applications, well, of course, the customer decision-making process at a commercial level is a lot different to the at the residential level. It's purely payback driven. We've seen that the market demands paybacks of 5 years and below to install CHP, and we believe that would be really a major driver for any decision for a commercial entity to install micro CHP or mini CHP, as it would be.
Stephen, there's a question here around asking about the gap between the current level of uptake and what's implied perhaps by some of the results from this research. I mean, do you see a gap between what's actually happening in the market and what's implied by this research?
Yeah, that's a good question. We certainly do. Let me jump back to the UK slide because I think that demonstrates it clearer than the German slide does. So as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the current fully installed cost for a Stirling engine system in the UK is on the graph we see in front of us. It's just to the left of the word fully. So it's over £10,000 certainly. And from our sample, we saw that even 1 to 2% of the sample on average would have installed a micro CHP system at that price. In reality, installation values which Delta report on year-on-year have been below that. And of course there are lots of different factors that go into that. Number one is the level of product availability, still very, very restricted. But of course it's the whole effort that needs to go into the value chain to raise awareness of customers, but also of installers as well, to be able to pitch micro-CHP to customers in a way that they understand. It's the ability to, in some cases, provide financing for customers who are interested in installing micro-CHP, but they just can't find that upfront capital. And the issue is similar in Germany too. So when we jump back to Germany, again, current fully installed costs are equal to about, or just directly above the word fully on the horizontal axis. That's close to about 5 to 10% of our sample that's said to be installed.
Big chunk, isn't it?
Big chunk. And then when you look at fuel cell, that's even more. That's over 15% of our sample who said they would install. Again, uptake in reality has been a lot less than that. Fuel cell is just coming into market, so there's a reason there. But again, we believe that there is certainly more opportunity that can be capitalised on with a more collaborative effort from all those involved in the value chain.
So the gap between where the market is and where it could be depends a lot more than just on the price of the installation. There's a number of other factors around customer awareness, installer awareness, routes to market.
Certainly, and we pitched the idea of micro-CHP to respondents in this survey in a very matter-of-fact way. Again, if you were a retailer or anyone looking to sell micro-CHP, you would word it differently, and again, that would have, we believe, an impact on how likely customers would be to install products. So again, it's the whole area of marketing and how you reach out to customers and how you really focus the value for them, how you help customers visualize the value of micro-CHP.
Yeah, okay. And why do you think there's such a difference between Germany and the UK in these charts? You haven't shown any data for the Netherlands, but perhaps explain where Netherlands fits in relative to these two countries, but also interesting to comment upon why Germany seems to be so much more positive than the UK.
Sure. Well, for those interested in the Netherlands, apologies we haven't included that. We thought the Netherlands is very similar to the UK. So we clearly identified through this research that Germany is a high-cost market, quite unique in terms of Europe and in terms of where product has already been launched. Conversely, the UK and the Netherlands are quite clearly low-cost markets. So the uptake curve for the Netherlands is very similar to the UK. In terms of answering the second question, why are customers in Germany willing to pay more to install micro-CHP? Well, of course, there are many reasons. The main ones that we believe, of course, there's more, as we say, more fat in the value chain in Germany. It's an established trend that each player takes quite a substantial margin from the manufacturer selling price, from the installer selling price to the installer margin, which leads up to a higher fully installed cost for the end customer. Of course, the issue over the past few years with the energy vendor and the rising cost of fuel, electricity and gas in Germany, has also had quite a significant impact on customer decision making. So the driver to reduce your ongoing running costs is certainly a lot stronger in Germany than in the UK. And because of that, customers are more willing to invest more upfront and to wait for a longer return on their investment compared to countries like the UK and the Netherlands, where the fuel costs are still a lot less impactful on people's finances. One additional point that is useful to mention as well, just talking about micro-CHP or any heating system as an investment, people in Germany on average spend double the amount of time in living in their home than they do in the UK as well. So the average period of residency in the UK is about 7 years. That doubles to 14 years for many German households. So again, it's just the longer term view of what a heating system will provide, and being that bit more willing to wait to see a return on investment.
So that explains why the upfront cost barrier is less in Germany than in the UK or the Netherlands.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And final question here, perhaps around the cost. I mean, we've talked here about the fully installed cost. You know, I noticed we have quite a few manufacturers, developers on the line today. I'm sure they're interested in what you think the implication might be for them, for manufacturers. You know, what are the implications of this research, which focuses on fully installed costs for manufacturers in terms of the price or the cost level that they have to get to, do you think?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, if you look at, if you remain on the graph for Germany, I think that can help us visualise the answer to this question quite well. So, as we have said, and as it says on the axis there, we modelled fully installed costs, so that includes everything the customer would pay, of course, from the manufacturing selling price of the unit, which incorporates, of course, the selling price of perhaps the hot box, the fuel cell, the Stirling engine, whatever, from the technology developer. Of course, there's then a margin depending on whether the product goes through wholesale or whether it goes direct to the installer. And again, the installer will take their piece of the pie as they install it for the end customer as well. So prices are variable, but at the moment we assume about 55% of the fully installed cost for the end user in the UK is just based on the selling price of the micro-CHP system. Sorry, that's 65%. In Germany, it's about 55%.
So 65% in the UK.
65% in the UK, 55% in Germany. Okay. So, like I touched upon earlier, there's more fat in the chain in the German market. VAT right towards the end. You can still have micro-CHP installed and only pay 5% VAT in the UK, right, which isn't, to be honest, isn't proving to be a big driver for uptake of systems, but it's helpful when it comes to people who participate further back down the value chain in their pricing strategies. In Germany, still 20%. So if you're a manufacturer, for example, looking at this chart for Germany, you know, divide everything by 50%, and that's what you'd be looking to achieve to get the corresponding uptake from the graph.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I think we've covered the questions that have come in, I think.
Yep, I think that's everything.
Okay. So just move on to the summary slide, perhaps.
Oh, sorry, one more thing we forgot to mention, actually. Sorry,
okay,
folks. Thanks, Andy. Yes, what we looked at in this research was just related to micro-CHP and how much people would be willing to pay for it. Here at Delta, we take a view across all the different low-carbon heating technologies that might be coming onto the market. And it's worth bearing in mind that if people have said they'll be willing to pay for micro-CHP, it's possible they could also be tempted away by alternative technologies. This example graph comes from our roadmap service looking at Germany and how we expect boiler sales are going to change out to 2025. And what you can see is that we're predicting that people will move away from traditional gas boilers into other heating technologies. And what we expect to see is that about roughly a third of those people would be tempted to go for a Stirling engine, about a third for fuel cell micro-CHP, but a good chunk of people will also find it very attractive to install a gas heat pump. So just something else to bear in mind. I suppose that probably has an impact on marketing strategies and people thinking about where customers will be tempted to move to.
So certainly competition from other technologies is one of the other factors that needs to be considered, not just the install price.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Okay, and these are the questions that we posed at the beginning of the webinar. So Kate, Stephen, perhaps if I ask you the summary view, yes, no. So if we're selling at 18,000 euros and cut the price by 2,000 euros, will I still sell the same number of units?
In a word, no.
No?
Not at a 2,000 euro reduction won't be very significant from £8,000. So 18,000 euros, as we mentioned, higher up the cost curve, there's a far lower rate of response. But certainly, if you drop down, you could see a significant impact.
So if you're reducing from 12,000 to 10,000, yes, you would say
that's where customers would be much more responsive.
And that threshold price level is what we identify in this research.
Yeah.
So that's available to subscribers. Okay.
And it's also very different in the different countries. That's what else we found. It might have a different impact taking 2,000 euros off in Germany compared to in the UK or in Netherlands.
Yeah. Okay. absolutely. So where are the key markets for micro-CHP in Europe? I mean, we've looked at 3 markets here. Seems to me fairly obvious which is the most attractive.
Yeah, we've identified, of course, Germany that remains the most attractive market at this point in time. Across all markets, as was evident when you look at towards the lower, the farther right of each graph, very high opportunity for a product that can come in for a low cost.
Yeah.
So we're talking about several £1,000s or euros marginal cost over a gas boiler. And that can, across the board, that could have quite a significant impact, we think, on our markets, including Italy as well, as one that we haven't looked at in this research, but one that we're quite close to also.
So the UK could be an attractive market if the cost level gets to the right point.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the developer question there, how low do I need to get the price to sell the necessary number of units? I suppose related to the previous question, it depends on the market, depends on the technology, depends how many products you need to sell, how many units you need to sell.
Exactly, yeah. What we identified for our micro-CHP subscribers here was a very bottom-up, logical appreciation of customer thinking, and one that we hope will be really helpful for them just to plan, how realistic any strategy could be in terms of achieving, an achievable level of uptake.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Kate. So I think we'll bring the webinar to a close now. That's just about time done. Thank you for everyone who's participated today. I'll just repeat again for any subscribers that are on the call today that the full report and all the data is already available on the member website, so please log in and download all of that information. For non-subscribers on the call today, we'd be delighted if you would contact us and be interested in getting access to this report. We're happy to discuss with you this specific report and how we can make this available to you. And of course, if you would like to be joining the subscription service as a member, we'd obviously be delighted to talk to you about that. But whether you're a subscriber or a non-subscriber, we hope you found that interesting and a useful 40 minutes of your time. Feel free to contact either myself, Scott or Stephen with any questions. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, please email us and we'd be happy to share the slides with you. But thank you for your time, and I wish you a good day wherever you are.